Right.
We have we have an interesting one here, right? We're going to start out with this behind us.
Better light on the green screen there. I mean, on the real background that we have.
The United Nations Human Rights Office to the High Commission has just released a report on the Xinjiang Uyghur situation.
Finally.
Now, look, this report has been in the works for 3 years. Mm-hmm. China has tried to prevent this report from being released in every which way they can.
My gosh, yeah.
They've tried bullying, threatening, undermining things. They got the Miss Bachelet, the sort of High Commissioner of the UN, to go to China to, they took her on a guided tour.
Do you know what they did? Like, the biggest flex that they did to try to stop this was be in the UN.
Yes.
And freaking buy out the Human Rights Council.
Yeah.
And become a member.
I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. I have lost a huge amount of faith in the UN. Ever since they allowed China to be a part of the human rights, the UN human rights, whatever you call it, thing. China has no place in the United Nations, especially not on the Human Rights Board.
No.
They have no place there. No. They've got such a bad record when it comes to human rights.
One of the worst. Down there at the bottom 5.
The fact that they've got, powers in the UN to veto certain things and, so on and so forth it's just a joke, really, if I'm going to be honest with you.
Happy for them to be a part of it if they start behaving.
Yeah, but at the same time, they're not qualified to be in the UN.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they're not qualified. They're just certainly not. Okay, anyway, the fact of the matter is they tried their best to stall this report. They tried their best to prevent this report. And it's kind of interesting that the Human Rights High Commissioner, Miss Bachelet or Mrs. Bachelet or whatever it is, she released this report 13 minutes before resigning.
Yeah.
Before stepping down from her post.
Yeah.
So she waited until the very last minute to release this. And it's curious that she would do that. Why do you think she'd do that?
I think she was under so much pressure from China, which is a member of the UN Human Rights Council.
Yeah.
And I think that they had pressured her so much while she was in China and then prior to that as well.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about pressure like, oh, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Like, there's ways to pressure people, right? Sure. You can say, listen, this company might get cut off, or this person that might be, we'll stop ties with them. Mm-hmm. We won't contribute this amount of money. I don't know what happened, right? But I'm telling you, there's ways that they can pressure somebody to not do something.
Sure.
There's a lot of people that are going to lose their jobs or get hurt because of this.
Yeah.
These people in China, they're not going to be part of blah, blah. Anyway, long story short, she was pressured so much that at least I believe, that she was like waiting to the last minute to be like, well, I wash my hands of this situation. I'll release it, but then I'm out. And I'm not responsible for any fallout that happens after
I think
this.
that's it. I think she's stepping away from the UN because she knows that the backlash of her report is going to be bad on anyone that's in the UN. So now she could go retire and drink wine or whatever it is.
Or whatever she likes to do.
Yeah, can't start my morning without a Merlot or something sitting on
a Minions fan?
I don't know. But
Imagine Dragons listener.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Anyway, the fact of the matter is I think you're right. I think that she was a coward. And she didn't want to face repercussions.
I didn't say that.
Well, I'm saying that. I truly do believe that she behaved very cowardly in this entire situation. Not only did she allow China to take her on this guided whitewashing tour of Xinjiang and capitulate to them all this time, but she allowed them to pressure her into not releasing this report until the last minute. Yeah. And that is cowardly. That is somebody bowing down and shirking their responsibilities as the human rights, the grand great commissioner of the UN, whatever.
I mean, we saw similar actions with the WHO.
Yeah.
Now they're coming right in many ways, starting to criticize some of China's actions and stuff, but not in the beginning, right?
Yeah,
this is the problem.
That's just my take on that, is that she was a coward and she waited until she was just about to leave so she could drop the mic and let other people deal with the repercussions.
When she put out her Spotify playlist with Imagine Dragons and the Minions soundtrack, it should have been the biggest red flag for everyone.
Sure.
Right.
Anyway, let's get into what this...
So anyway, she released it, and that's the good thing.
Now, let's talk about this. Now, we're going to just gloss over some of the main points of this, and also why I think it's also a cop-out in some ways. Yes. So, China has... This is coming from the report. China has committed serious human rights violations against Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang province that could amount to crimes against humanity. the outgoing UN Human Rights Commissioner has said in a long-awaited damning report. But you see, it's this whole could amount to crimes and may have amounted to. You'll hear that too. May have amounted to, could have amounted to.
It's like a step in the right direction. Here we go. Like,
I mean,
it's more than I thought, to be fair.
Yeah. It's good that was said, because then now it lays a kind of a basis for a more formal investigation to happen. You know?
Yeah. That's what this is. It's a framework to, if you think about it in a court context, right? This is kind of we've been presented with this allegation.
Yeah.
We will now go try to piece together evidence.
Yeah, it's kind of like this man may have stolen, something from there. And then you go and do the actual investigation.
Yes, I know Attorney Wu could definitely figure it out. That's for sure.
I mean, it's freaking 3 years too late. And of course, China has already gotten rid of all the evidence and, all that kind of, same with the Wuhan lab thing.
Yeah.
All these big organizations like the UN and the WHO, they get stalled.
I'd like to think that going forward, when we deal with China, right, when we deal with the Chinese government and then their cover-ups, we kind of nip it in the bud in the beginning rather than 2-3 years down the road when everything's been torched.
By the way, I just want to say this now. It's unrelated, but kind of related. It's got to do with the stock markets and investments. And I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not giving financial advice here. But what I want you guys to realize is that you may have heard of this whole thing that China has decided to abide by certain rules. Okay, because in order to list on the US stock exchange, you have to abide by certain rules. And one of them is that you should be able to be audited by the Securities Exchange or whatever it is, whatever that financial crap is. And China's been opaque and hasn't allowed these companies to audit the Chinese companies that are listed for the longest time. So now they're facing this situation where they're either going to get taken off the stock exchange or they must allow people to audit.
Yes.
So now the Chinese government has released this statement saying, we will allow these companies to be audited.
Yeah.
And what this has done is it's created a frenzy of investment, because people are now like, look, they're going to be openly audited, so now is a good time to invest. And a lot of people have decided to go and invest in China again now, seeing it as like, oh, now it's going to be good.
Right.
And all these big investment companies like BlackRock and so on. And if you have a retirement fund, there's probably a big portion of your retirement fund is being invested in Asia emerging markets, which just means China. Yeah. But this is a stall tactic, because the Chinese government's like, yes, we're going to let you audit. And then they're going to take everybody's investment and they're going to keep it going for the longest time. And the people be like, can we audit you now? Like, yeah, of course you can. Just hang on.
Yeah.
Hang on. And then when they've got enough investment and they keep stalling it for the longest time, they're going to keep taking the money, investment money. And when they decide that they've had enough and they're just getting tired of everyone pestering them to audit or whatever, they'll be like, nah, actually, no, and cut it off. And everyone's going to lose their money. It's just a prediction. But if you look at what they've been doing with these other things like the WHO and now with the UN, you can see that this is a tactic that the Chinese government uses a lot. Yes, we'll let you come and take a look at the Wuhan lab. Yes, you can come and do an inspection. And everyone's like, when can we do it? And they're like, well, only this guy, Ballsack. Yeah, Ballsack can come and do it because he actually has a stake in the lab and we know him well. And, we drink baijiu with the guy. And then he comes along, and then that kind of muddies the water, and it takes forever, and they just stall until eventually they've gotten rid of all the evidence, and they can say, there's nothing there anyway.
Yes.
Same thing with this Uyghur thing.
Yeah.
3 years later, oh yeah, okay, finally. Anyway, just saying, I know it's off topic, but if you do have your investments in China, in your 401k and stuff.
Not advice.
It's not advice, but it is advice from the point of view that I'd be careful.
Yeah, be careful.
Be careful. Okay. Anyway, let's continue on with this report. So the report, we're just going to go through some of the main key points here. And the first key point that we're going to look at in this report is, of course, the whole crimes against humanity. So let's make it smaller there. I'll read this for you quickly. The top line of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights report is that the Commissioner's office found credible evidence of torture and other human rights abuses that were likely to be crimes against humanity. Again, likely to be. I don't know why they can't just say it is. You find credible evidence of torture, you should be like, this is crimes against humanity.
Yeah.
Not like likely to be.
Right.
The report included allegations of people being strapped by their hands and feet to a tiger chair. For those of you who don't know what a tiger chair is, it's kind of like this metal medieval torture devices.
I've seen one in real life.
Exactly. And you sit down on the thing and they shackle you to it.
Yep.
And they use it during confessions and stuff. Yep. And beaten, women raped, and others held in extended solitary confinement. Others appeared to have been waterboarded, as the report described individuals being subjected to interrogation with water being poured in their faces. Rights organizations such as Human Rights Watch have also determined that crimes against humanity are being committed against Uyghur and other Turkic Muslim minorities in Xinjiang. The UN didn't call this a genocide as the US government and others have. So the UN didn't go as far as to say there was any kind of cultural genocide or genocide, but they said crimes against humanity. Maybe. Looks like it. Possibly.
Yep.
Grow a spine. Anyway, to move on. Anti-extremism. This is the next part of the report, like the other significant thing.
Sure.
The report was highly critical of the Chinese government's anti-extremism doctrine, which underpins the crackdown. It said that the laws and regulations were vague and ill-defined, open to individual interpretation, and blurred the line between indicators of concern and suspected criminality. Both categories also contained a copious number of benign acts classed as extremism despite having no connection to it, such as having a beard or a social media account. So, that's true. We've seen that. We've talked about that.
Xinjiang police leaks. If you guys haven't seen, we did some very in-depth coverage of the police files. What happened was there was a leak in a Xinjiang police station, and about over 2,000 mugshots and descriptions of crimes were leaked, and they're all documented on the website. And they were not happy about that one. No. That was like second to the COVID thing. Yeah, they were really upset about that.
They certainly were,
because what this ended up being was it ended up going into official reports like this. Yeah, and it can be quoted now. Yeah. It's official document.
I mean, like, if you look at some of the charges, they were charging, like, young children that happened to have been in a house when someone listened to a podcast.
Right. I mean, it was, like, stretched.
Someone prayed with their uncle, and now they're, detained. That kind of crap. Okay, let's continue. Such indicators may simply be the manifestation of personal choice in the practice of Islamic religions, beliefs, and or legitimate expressions of opinion, it said. Accusations of extremism could result in people being referred to detention facilities at multiple stages along the investigative process by police, prosecutors, or the courts. So it's very straightforward. They're just like, look, this is a very arbitrary, this anti-extremism thing that they put forth in Xinjiang is so open-ended that they could literally just pick up anyone for anything. Yes. Oh, you looked at the wrong person or something. Now you're an extremist and we're going to put you away in one of our concentration camps. Yes. Okay. The next point here, arbitrary detention. Do you want to read that one?
Sure. The report found that there was an acute risk of arbitrary detention and that it was reasonable to conclude that a pattern of large-scale arbitrary detention occurred in vocational education and training center facilities, at least during the 2017 to 2019. It pushed back on Beijing's claims that the facilities were schools or training centers where participants were free to join and leave. The report said such placements amounted to a form of deprivation of liberty. A deprivation of liberty occurs when a person is being held without his or her consent, it says. Consistent accounts obtained by the OHCHR, however, indicate a lack of free and informed consent to being placed in the centers, and that it's impossible for an individual detained in such a heavily guarded center to leave of their own free will. 2/3 of the former detainees interviewed by the OHCHR reported being subject to treatment that would amount to torture or other forms of ill treatment.
Yeah, so at least they're pointing out that what the Chinese government was saying is bullshit. They're not just schools that people can, voluntarily join and leave. I mean, we saw in the Xinjiang police files that they had shoot-to-kill orders if people tried to leave. Yes. So, yeah, we all know it's bullshit. At least that part's accurate. Forced labor. The report also pushed back on China's rejection of forced labor accusations, finding them to appear discriminatory in nature or effect and to involve elements of coercion. It said that the labor schemes were closely linked to the anti-extremism framework and arbitrary detention, which raises concerns in terms of the extent to which such programs can be fully voluntary. So yeah, why would these people be part of these labor programs only if they'd been detained or, taken to these vocational schools, etc.?
Yes.
The next part, forced medication and sexual abuse. Detainees were also forced to take, Sorry, I'm being attacked by like a sonic weapon or something. Okay.
I'm not talking about Sonic and Knuckles.
Yeah. Okay. Detainees were also forced to take medication or injections without explanation of what it was. It noted persistent claims of sexual abuse and violence in the facilities, and government denials, which often used personal or gendered attacks against women reporting allegations, which is ridiculous. You saw that, right? The government officials calling, like, there's like a babushka-looking woman, this like fat old woman with a headscarf is claiming to have been raped and, multiple times. And they're saying, oh no, she's just a slut, she's just promiscuous.
The state.
The state was saying that, remember?
Yeah.
Oh, she's just a promiscuous slut. Right. This old babushka, I doubt she's a promiscuous slut. Right. And even if she was, you don't slut shame someone who's coming out to say, hey, listen, I've been raped by multiple people in this Chinese concentration camp.
They're like, you lying American scum.
We saw this happen a lot with, Uyghurs that had escaped China. Yeah. And that they were in like a Western country and they were submitting their reports to like the human rights commissions and stuff. And they would say they'd been raped, and the Chinese government would come out like, oh, that person, they're just a slut.
Yeah. I mean, that was like a common narrative.
And from Chinese officials, also from officials.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's a bad look.
Yeah, it's a bad look. The report also found the Chinese government made a clear link between frequency in childbirths and religious extremism. So again, they're like, oh, you're having a lot of kids, religious extremism over here.
Yep, because it says in the Quran to have a lot of kids, so that means you're being an extremist, so we're going to cull that.
Yeah.
We're going to stop you from having those children.
It said there were credible indications of violations of reproductive rights through the coercive enforcement of family planning policies, including allegations of forced abortions, contraception, and sterilization. It noted Xinjiang's rate of sterilization was 243 procedures for every 100,000 inhabitants, compared with a national average of 32. That's a lot. That's a huge percentage more. So these are the main things that came out in this report. Okay, sorry to bore you guys with all of this long-winded stuff, but it's important. Now, just before the report was about, to be released, one of our favorite wolf warriors, Jolly Jin, Mr. Projection himself, had like a press release to respond to various things. They go and have these press releases and they get questions asked. And I wanted us to read through some of these responses from him. So the Associated Free Press said, asked Zhao Lijian, today, Michelle Bachelet ends her mandate as the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and she has not yet released the assessment on the human rights conditions in Xinjiang. How does China view her work? Is China satisfied that she hasn't released the report? So this is just before it had been released, right? Do you want to read Zhao Lijian's response?
The post of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights is very important and comes with great responsibilities. China believes in the importance for anyone in that position to adhere to the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, strictly observe the mandate of the UN General Assembly, work under the principles of objectivity, impartiality, non-selectivity, and non-politicization, advance all types of human rights in a balanced way, engage in dialogue and cooperation with member states, and oppose the wrong practice of politicizing human rights and double standards. My God, was that a run-on sentence?
It was a lot of nonsense.
Yeah. August 31st is Ms. Bachelet's last day in office. As to the assessment you mentioned, China has made clear its stern. Sorry, I'm getting blurry here. Its stern position on many occasions. Is that sonic weapon?
Yeah.
We firmly oppose the release of the so-called assessment on Xinjiang by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. The assessment is a pure stunt orchestrated by the U.S. and a handful of other Western countries. We hope the High Commissioner will make the right decision.
Okay, now again, when you see the Chinese government mention so-called, this means it's true.
So-called is their new favorite thing, by the way.
Yeah, they like to say so-called to try to delegitimize something.
Yeah.
So in this case, Zhao Lijian was saying the so-called assessment on Xinjiang. And I like how he says, we hope the High Commission will make the right decision. Does that not sound like a veiled threat to you?
Don't say anything that we don't.
We hope you make the right decision.
Don't just don't say anything we don't want you to say.
Yeah, remember those hostages we told you we'd kill? You know, yeah,
that's on you.
Make the right decision.
Yep.
But seriously, you can see this is just a bunch of bullshit. Excuse the language, but this guy, this wolf warrior, is basically saying she better not release this so-called. Anyway, just to show you that the so-called thing is really a thing that they like to do. In the exact same press junket, Bloomberg asked Zhao Lijian this question. I would like to ask about a report that came out on Tuesday by US cybersecurity firm Proofpoint. In that report, the company alleges that a Chinese hacker group that has links to the Chinese government was behind an email phishing campaign that targeted energy projects in the South China Sea, among other projects and government agencies. Do you have any comment? Zhao Lijian said, the firm you mentioned has no professionalism or credibility to speak of. I mean, come on. Recently, it has frequently collaborated with the US government to systemically spread disinformation on the so-called China hacking attacks.
There were Chinese hacking attacks.
Yeah.
What do you mean so-called?
Exactly. Serving as the white gloves of the US government, we believe the international community has its own judgment on the firm's real intention.
White gloves, you say? Shimone.
Yeah, exactly. No, honestly, though, this whole so-called thing that they do, like the so-called China hacking attacks, everybody knows, and it's no secret, that the Chinese government has huge departments that are dedicated to cyber attacks. That's part of their... It's been like that since the 90s.
It's not new.
Yeah, I remember hearing about this stuff
deny
when
that?
I was still in high school.
Yeah.
Okay? China's always been at the forefront, China and Russia, when it comes to hacking.
Yes.
They're very good at this stuff, and they put a lot of resources into it. So it's not so-called. So whenever you see a Chinese official say so-called, you know it's something real.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to delegitimize it.
Yes.
Anyway, now let's move on, because the report was released. Okay, and we, by the way, yeah, never mind. See the subtitles. The so-called assessment.
Dude, it's everywhere.
It is.
It's just such a dog whistle.
Yeah, the so-called assessment report. Okay, so it was actually released after that whole thing with Zhao Lijian.
Yes.
And then we've got our good old friend here, Wang Yi, comes in.
Yes.
Who's another one of these wolf warriors, foreign spokespeople type people that work for the Chinese government. And we'll just play this little clip for you, and we'll kind of paraphrase for those of you who are listening at home. So let's just play it for everyone at home. But I'll tell you, the first sentence that he says is, this so-called assessment report.
Wait, it is an assessment report. It doesn't matter if you disagree with the contents or not. It still happened.
Yeah, it's not a so-called assessment. It is an assessment report, whether you like it or not.
Right.
The so-called assessment report you mentioned was planned and manufactured by the United States and some Western forces, and is completely illegal and invalid.
Illegal in what context?
I don't know. What? But why is it the United States and some other...
Because if anything bad that they don't like happens, it's the U.S. that did it now.
And some other foreign forces.
Other foreign forces,
yeah. Yeah, it's crazy that. The report is a collection of false information. Yeah. It's a political tool to serve the purpose of the US and the Western forces to try and work against China. Seriously, Western forces. I gotta be like, what are these Western forces?
I don't know.
But they're making up this fake report, apparently. This so-called report. I mean, they should be celebrating that they were so easy on this report.
Yeah.
Should be celebrating.
It was a win.
It was a massive win when they're like, oh, there may be human crimes against humanity. They didn't say like there are, which they should have.
Right. Which will probably materialize.
Yeah,
but they got off easy.
Yeah, they got off real easy.
Yeah.
Now he's like going in a rage about it being illegal and so-called this and that. Let's take a look.
Wang Wenbin?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. Forces to try and work against China. The UN High Commissioner fabricated the report based on the political plots of some anti-China forces abroad. So, you know Michelle Bachelet, right?
I do. Not personally, but yeah.
Well, you've seen her, right?
Hold my Merlot.
Yeah, Hold my Merlot, big matronly looking lady, right? Sure. Kind of the cook at the, in the school cafeteria
let's
type.
Slow down.
I'm just saying that's the image you get in your mind. But this woman, okay, drinking a Merlot, cooking for the kids in the school cafeteria.
So she does now since she's retired.
Yeah.
She volunteered.
Yeah, she fabricated these lies.
Yes, she did on behalf of the UN. Yeah. By the way, they were convinced that they had her completely bought and paid for. And I don't mean that like bribed. I mean like we paved the way. We showed her what we wanted her to see.
Yeah, they took her on like an all expenses paid tour of a whitewashed version of Xinjiang.
Yet still,
it
backfired.
And this is because of some anti-China forces abroad.
Yes,
okay,
of course. Right.
So she fabricated it.
Yes.
Okay, for some anti-China forces abroad.
She did it personally.
This lady,
the lady that they've been praising.
Yes.
It's her fault.
By the way, they were praising her the entire time up until now. Now all of a sudden it's like this woman. Okay, but
God forbid the truth comes out.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, which seriously violated the High Commissioner's responsibilities and seriously violated the principles of universality, objectivity, non-selectivity, and non-politicization. It proves once again that the UN High Commissioner has become a thug.
Wow.
And accomplice of the United States in the West.
Anytime you don't get your way, I told you over and over again, China behaves like a 12-year-old bully.
Yeah.
It really does. It hasn't gone past that mental, intellectual capability of projecting itself maturely. It has not gone past 12 years old. It's a thug. You call everyone a thug and a bully whenever it doesn't go your way.
So this woman, this matronly...
Stop with the lunch lady thing.
Okay, all right. This Merlot
we don't
swelling.
know yet.
She comes from Chile, right?
Yes.
Okay. There's a lot of wine there. Okay?
Yeah, she's definitely drinking Merlot.
She's drinking Merlot, okay?
Chilean Merlot.
Yeah, so she's chilling out, okay?
She's
drinking a Merlot. Now she's a thug and accomplice to the United States in the West.
Yes, because it didn't go their way.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure she's not a thug.
I'm pretty sure she's not a thug.
Yeah.
I didn't see her down there, in the streets of London harassing people and trying to steal their VCR and play it shooting dice in the corner.
No, she's not like, give me a wallet, with a knife or something.
With an Adidas tracksuit.
Yeah, pitching up with a baseball bat to like break someone's kneecap. She's not a thug.
Not a thug, no.
Or an accomplice of the United States.
Or she could be a thug in a good, thug life. Like, she's got a lowered car. She's got a massive subwoofer in the back. She's a thug.
Yeah, she's a bit of a thug, isn't she? Anyway, but according to this, the foreign ministry spokesperson here, she's a thug and an accomplice of the United States and the West. Because, why just mention the West, by the way?
It's just a thing now. I like how they've othered it to the point now where it's just the West.
So the United States is definitely like their number one target and enemy,
big time.
and the rest is just random the West.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting that, hey?
Yes.
Anyway, let's continue on. To fix the vast number of developing countries, the US and the West have devastated Xinjiang. Okay. And the political scheme of using Xinjiang to control China is unhelpful and unpopular. Kind of like you. and is doomed to fail.
They love it. Oh, that's the old one. That's the old one.
Yeah.
You got to understand China when you talk
about
these phrases,
exactly.
Sure.
You got to understand China.
China has used, so-called is the newest thing, but doomed to fail is like an old callback. They've been saying that for a while now.
Now, listen, I just got to quickly play this out in Chinese because people might say, oh, you just added those, he didn't say those things. No, if you can understand Chinese, I'm going to play it once through, uninterrupted.
Yeah, we didn't make this.
And you guys can read the subtitles and listen to the actual speech. And if you're Chinese, you'll understand. If you're studying Chinese, you'll understand. It's a good studying tool because it teaches you
Wang Wenbin's
what not
Chinese
to
is very
say.
clear as well.
Yeah, exactly. Also teaches you how to spot lies in Chinese. Yeah, okay, let's do it.
你提到的这份所谓的评估报告，是美国及一些西方势力一手策划制造的，完全非法无效。报告是虚假信息的大杂烩，是服务美西方以疆制华战略的政治工具。人权高专办基于境外一些反华势力的政治图谋杜撰报告，严重违反高专办职责，严重违背普遍、客观、非选择性、非政治化原则。再次证明，人权高专办已经沦为美西方整治广大发展中国家的打手和帮凶。 美西方祸乱新疆、以疆制华的险恶政治图谋，世道寡助，不得人心，注定失败。
Yep. Okay. So there we go. You can now have it all in one go and see what a ridiculous thing this is. So basically, what they're saying is like they didn't say what we wanted. What is that?
No, it's just the comments are bizarre.
Okay, good.
I can't read them.
All right. Well, that's the thing. Like the UN High Commissioner said something they don't like, so they have to be like, well, what?
It's just one of these is Wang Wenbin here sounds like a water cooler being emptied of its water.
Glug, glug, glug. I guess he kind of does.
What?
Yeah.
How do you come up with that, though?
I actually don't know. But it's good. It's good. I love it. Guys, this is what you see here is just like absolute insecure nonsense from the Chinese government. They cannot handle that. Although the huge amount of threatening and grooming and everything else they did to try and stop this report from coming out, that it actually came out. They thought they had it in the bag after they'd, controlled this whole thing in Xinjiang with the Bachelet visit. Michelle Bachelet.
Is she going to go on The Bachelorette?
No, yeah, the Bachelet.
If she can get her shift off from Chili's.
Yeah, exactly.
The Chili's cafeteria.
The Chili's cafeteria, you know what I'm saying. Anyway, the fact of the matter is now she's an enemy. It's interesting how the Chinese government will treat someone as some kind of a savior when they're just saying the things China wants to hear. But we saw this with Tedros as well, remember?
Yeah.
Tedros was like, oh, what a great man. And then suddenly he starts questioning China and he's now the enemy. What? You can't just laugh there and not share it with everyone. Don't be that guy. What is it?
I can't. It's too obscure.
Okay, well, try. What?
I mean, there's speculation that he wouldn't burn if set on fire because he's the wettest person in China. Okay. And then he moans when he wipes himself.
Okay, all right, I get you. Well, let's move on
and now the catchphrase now is glug, glug, glug. Wang Wen glug.
Somebody please make a water, like turn him into a water bottle glug.
A water cooler.
Yeah, you know those big water coolers?
It's like the square ones.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
no, it's like one of those?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You know, see the bubbles rising up in them? Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, cool.
Glorp.
Yeah,
Glorp. Glorp.
That's him. Yeah. Anyway, it's always funny watching these guys having a meltdown anyway. Yeah. Okay. Are we ready to hit our next segment?
Instead of Mr. Wang Wenbin, it's Moister Wang Wenbin.
Okay, all right. Some obscure shit comes out on the show. You gotta love it. You gotta love it.
Water cooler diplomacy.
That's a good one. That's a really good one. Yeah. Okay. All right. So no, that's good. I love it. I love it. We gotta make this a thing on the subreddit, guys. That's what is it? Reddit.com/r/ADVChina.
He's storing water in his cheeks.
He kind of looked like he was back there. Anyway, guys, let's move on from Water Cooler Boy for a second.
I don't want this to turn into the don't take drugs moment. I'm as sober as a ghost or whatever they say. Yeah. What I will say is that something about that water cooler thing really just threw me off. It's so obscure, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's so apt.
It needs to be made into something.
Oh my gosh,
yeah.
Water cooler diplomacy.
Absolutely.